Hello everyone and welcome to today's tutorial. Today we're going to show you how to build a hosted UniFi controller in the cloud. As per usual, the tutorial is broken out into 4 separate sections. First, we're going to do a secure VPS setup, in this case on DigitalOcean. We're going to put in a static external DNS entry. We're going to set up our SSH keys to securely log on to the box. And we're also going to set up a letsencrypt SSL certificate. Then we're going to configure the UniFi repository and set up a UFW firewall and finally load the controller. Then we're going to adopt our access point onto the controller and finally configure a Wi-Fi network and join a test machine to that network. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The free programs used in this are the open source tool PuTTY, available from putty.org. Also, obviously, you need a ubiquity access point, and in our case, we have an 8-port switch and a local firewall with the DCHP enabled on it. I've added a small network diagram here just to show and outline how everything looks visually, and that should assist as you're following through the tutorial. Okay, so now we're going to jump on to DigitalOcean, which is the VPS provider we're going to use in this case. Obviously, you can use AWS or Linode or anyone else that offers any sort of VPS that runs on a Linux-based distro. We're going to also use Ubuntu for this particular install. Okay, let's go ahead and jump onto DigitalOcean and get started. Okay, so as you can see, we've logged on to our DigitalOcean control panel. We're going to create a new droplet, so we're just going to call it UniFi Cloud Controller. We're going to create a project, and then we're going to create a droplet inside that project. So just hit skip for now. Okay, so then we're going to go and get started with our droplet. You don't need a particularly powerful droplet for this. Most entry-level ones will do. We're going to pick Ubuntu 20.04 as our distro. We're going to then select there's actually an option for regular SSD there. We're going to pick as well. Like I said, we don't need massive amounts of disk I/O resources, so $5 a month. Let's select that. And we're going to pick in a region. The region close to me is London, so we'll select that. We'll leave it in its default VPC, and then we're just going to select SSH keys for authentication. I'm going to go ahead and do a new SSH key here. We're going to use a tool called PuTTyGen on our Windows 10 machine to generate the public key to paste in here, and the private key will be kept on our machine. So here we go, we've PuTTY generator on our local machine. We're simply going to hit generate. We'll move our mouse backwards and forwards just for some random content to be added into the pair. Okay, so we can see that it's added. We're also going to name this. We'll just call it controller UniFi. We're going to add an additional key phrase to the cert as well. So you do need a password in addition to the cert when you're logging into the box. Okay, so we're going to save the public key, and then we're going to save the private key. Public key is going to be pasted onto the DigitalOcean panel, and then the private key will be kept secret, and only yourselves will have that. It's important to keep them in a secure location. Okay, so here we are. Let's save our private key file here as well. Just call it controller-private. Make it easy to find. Hit save. Okay, so we can copy the contents of our public key here as well. We'll just jump back onto DigitalOcean here. New SSH key, paste in our public key we just generated, give it a name. I can type correctly. Okay, UniFi controller, add SSH key. Takes a few seconds, and you can see there we've now added an additional key. So now we're going to pick our droplet. We're going to choose a host name now. We're going to call ours controller1.trackmything.com. It's just a test domain we have set up where we use it for these type of projects, just random stuff that comes up. Okay, so we're also going to be adding an A record for this host name, so it resolves externally, so we can use an SSL cert with it. And we're going to do it in GoDaddy in a minute. Now let's just hit create droplet and we'll get started. Okay, so it just takes a couple of minutes just to come live. I'll scoot through some of this and speed it up so we don't have to wait. So as you can see, our drop is now created, and we now have a static address as well, which we're going to need with their host name, and we're going to enter into GoDaddy, which is where we happen to have this domain DNS entries hosted. So we're going to add an A record for controller1.trackmything.com, and this again is so we can resolve the name externally, and we'll also be able to use it with our letsencrypt certificate we're going to generate later on. And it's also obviously important to have a static address for the access points to talk out to the controller as well, with a name that resolves properly. Okay, so we've added our A record there, you can see that. So now if we log on via SSH to our new box using the host name and the certificate that we used in the previous step, we just add it in here. This will be our private key we generated. So we're just going to go over to the left here, click SSH, click the plus, click auth, click browse, and we'll just find the controller priv. Yeah, there we go, controller private.ppk. That's the private end of the key for SSH and in. And we're just going to back to our session, hit save, and now we're just going to open and log in. Okay, so we've logged in. Our login is root in this case, and now it's asked us for the passphrase for the key we generated previously, which we've just added in. Okay, so we're on the box and we're logged in. So we're going to do an sudo apt get update and apt get upgrade. As you can see there now, we're just running to run the latest updates on the box before we do anything. Okay, so that's completed. I've sped some sections of this up as well. So now we're going to add our firewall rules. Again, these are in the description below. We're using UFW here. For our firewall, you can equally use any IP tables based firewall as long as you enter in the correct ports. And we're going to do sudo UFW enable, hit Y, and then we'll do a UFW status just to show us the ports we've allowed in. And you can see there we've added in all the ports we need to connect. 22.8443 is for the controller. It's locked to my one IP address at home, and so is port 22. The other ports are open and they're needed for communication with the controller. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start to install some of the prerequisites. We need OpenJDK and HAVG, so we're going to add them with sudo apt install. Again, all the links for all the various commands are in the description below. Again, I'll speed this section up. Okay, so now we're going to echo the repo, the ubiquity repo into our list, and then we just grab the GPG key there as well. Should be pretty much ready to go ahead and do our ubiquity install. So we'll do an sudo apt update and sudo apt install unifi -y. You can see it just run through its install there. Okay, so now we're just going to quickly reconfigure our time zone. So we'll do a reconfigure and we'll pick Europe and Dublin, which is where we're located, and set the time zone correctly, and we'll also then install NTP as well. So now we're going to install our cert bot for Apache, which is what will allow us to use our Let's Encrypt cert on the box. So we're going to go ahead and run through that installer. It's done. And we're going to run a sudo certbot apache -d and our hostname controller1.trackmything.com. It's going to ask us for some basic verification stuff. So we're just going to put our email address in here. This is what's going to allow us to have a valid SSL cert on the box, which the controller can also use. Okay, so you can see there that it's issuing the cert. Yes, and a cron job will reconfigure to automatically renew this. It's just using the Apache Let's Encrypt module to do the verification. Okay, so you can see there it's added a vhost. Okay, we're done. So now we've one final step to complete, and that's just to run a script that will add the actual certificate paths into the controller, so the controller can actually use them as well. Fortunately, there's actually an easy script available on GitHub for this, and again, the link is in the description below, and we'll run through that now as well. Okay, so we'll just paste the script in to grab it, then we'll change mod plus exit just to make it executable, and then we need to just edit some parameters here using nano. We're on a Debian instance. The default is for CentOS, I think. So we just need to comment down some lines and also change an entry for your hostname. So you see here Unifi hostname, change that to the hostname we've been using, which in our case is controller1.trackmything.com. And then we're going to just jump down and comment these lines out as they're for Fedora or CentOS installations, and we'll uncomment the Debian and Ubuntu based one below. It just correctly points to the key store for Java, and we'll change this to Let's Encrypt mode enabled yes. Okay, now there's also a section here that's important, and that if you create a symlink for the script, it'll automatically be added in as a hook when the Let's Encrypt cron job runs to update the certificate. So you don't have to do anything else, just the existing cron job that Let's Encrypt puts in will hook in and grab the additional script and import the certs into the conf store automatically for you. Okay, so now it's time to actually log into the controller for the first time. You can see here it's on port 8443. So we have a few basic steps to follow. First, we just want to give our controller a name. We'll just call it my controller. You can call it whatever you want as long as it's something meaningful. Click on next. Now we're going to switch to advanced setup here. We don't want to sign in with our Unifi account because we're going to be actually using our local account. So we can also untick remote access because it's the local box itself we're logging into. So we're just going to create a user, and this will be the admin user that's used to access the console. So I've created a user here called user1 with a password and my email address, and we're just going to flick through the rest of the steps then. That's basically the initial part of the controller setup. There's also an option to add in a Wi-Fi network here. You can call it test Wi-Fi or test Wi-Fi 1 if you want, or you can do this at a later step. I'll do it as well later on in the video. Set the radio for 2.5 or 5G. You can set your country or territory here as well. This just configures a wireless network on the default site. Obviously you can use this in a multi-tenant capacity as well and add additional sites and additional Wi-Fi networks as you need. We'll just click finish. Okay, so at this stage we're just at the basic kind of initial dashboard you get after creating a site and logging in. So we can also flick to the classic dashboard, which people who've used older versions might be more familiar with. And all the standard settings you'd expect to see are in here. Step is now to have an access point connect out and join into our controller. So we've plugged in our access point on our LAN, and we're just going to use advanced IP scanner just to scan the LAN quickly. We already have DHCP addresses being handed out from our firewall, so it should come up on a dynamic address on this LAN. As it runs through the subnet, it should pick it up, and we can identify it by the MAC address on the unit. There's an existing UniFi unit on here as well, so it's the second one here, I think. Okay, yeah, so it's the second one. 0C, it's on 45, so 2.45. We'll SSH into that. So we'll open PuTTY on our desktop here. 192.168.2.45, or whatever the machine comes up on your IP range. UBNT and UBNT are the default usernames and passwords associated with the access point out of the box. So we've just logged in. We're just going to see if we have internet access on it. So we ping 8.8.8. We can see we're getting a reply. Help. We'll just give you a quick list of the commands. It's the set inform command we're actually going to be using to contact our controller in the cloud and provision the unit. So let's just jump back onto our controller for a second. Log in with our user 1 account we previously configured. You can see over on the left hand side here there's the default site. You can add additional sites for multi-tenancy if needed, but we're just going to be using the default site for this demo. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump back onto our controller here. We're going to use the URL address controller1.trackmything as the address for set inform. Let's first just see if we can ping that to make sure it's resolving the name correctly from the access point. So type ping controller1.host-trackmything.com. We can see we get a reply. Okay, so we'll do set-inform http, not https, //controller1.trackmything.com /8080/inform. And this basically just tells the access point it wants to be adopted by this controller, so inform it. So if we now go back to unified devices, we can see that our access point is now present. It hasn't been adopted yet, but it's actually communicated out successfully to controller in the cloud. That's the LAN address it's on, its uptime, and a few various bits of information about the access point. So if we click on it, and you can see its MAC address and a few other bits and bobs, we now need to adopt it into the actual controller. So if we click adopt, it'll adopt, and it'll then prompt us to add a Wi-Fi network. Now I deleted the one we previously did just so we could run through it again here. So just give it a minute or two to adopt. Sometimes it can take a couple of minutes for it to actually adopt and update. So we'll add a new Wi-Fi network, and we'll call it, I think we call it test Wi-Fi or test Wi-Fi 1. We'll call it test Wi-Fi 1. I may have one of a similar name already. Okay, and we'll just give it a Wi-Fi, your SSID password basically. It's going to run on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. We're not using radius auth, or we're not using anything else complicated just for this demo. It's just to get the unit talking and show you how the controller functions. So we're just going to use WPA2. Obviously if you're using radius or anything like that, you're going to use WPA Enterprise. We're not doing Mac based auth or anything like that here. You can do it if you want. There's also a Wi-Fi scheduler option as well there. Okay, so just going to hit add Wi-Fi network. Okay, so you can see there in our default site we've added our test Wi-Fi 1. So now what we'll do is we'll just grab a machine and we'll connect to that Wi-Fi network in a second. So you can see here, firstly though, there's an update available on the firmware, so you can push the firmware out to the unit and have it update as well. So it's running the latest firmware. We can also rename our access point to something a little bit more practical in the menu here. We'll call it my AP1. Okay, so you can see it's updated. Our firmware status says up to date. So we should now be fully ready to add in a Wi-Fi network. Let's just scroll down here and we can see there's our test Wi-Fi 1 network. We'll hit connect and pop in the password we pre-configured in the initial step. Click yes. Okay, if we then flick back over, we'll be able to see on our controller. You can see our clients connected. You can see the laptop that I'm on at the moment is now connected to the test Wi-Fi 1 SSID. It also gives you various statistics about the topology and a few other bits. There's not much here. We've only one unit connected, which is ourselves at the moment. But if you had, it'll show multiple access points and multiple clients connected, and what access points are connected here as well. And then there's obviously the logs here as well. Okay, so you can see your dashboard here again. You can see the Wi-Fi experience that's listed here. It's handy just to log into and see if you're having any local issues. That's it, that's the end of the video, folks. Just the run through of a basic config of a Cloud Hosted Unifi Controller. If you have any questions or want us to do any sort of different videos, please do leave a comment in the description below. We do read them and we'll go through them for you. Thank you.